blocks the water. Now thousands are struggling to survive. Welcome to the latest issue of Top Secret. The Mekong River is called the lifeline of Southeast Asia, originating from the Tibetan Plateau, flowing over 4,000 kilometers, nourishing many lands from China to Vietnam. The upstream section in China alone holds something strange, where massive dams like Shaowen and Mujadu rise as both a source of pride and a mystery. They generate electricity, store water, but what lies behind? A price few anticipate is waiting to be revealed. The Mekong River and the secret of its upstream section in China. Scientists are now sounding alarms, their warnings growing increasingly urgent. The dams, especially Shaowen, are drastically altering the Mekong's natural flow. Millions of people in downstream countries, who depend on this river for their livelihood, are being severely affected. Water no longer flows steadily as before. The dry season brings depletion, the floods, fish have nowhere to spawn, fields lack salt, and people's lives are gradually becoming precarious. So what is happening? How far will the consequences reach if China continues to control this water flow? To understand better, we must look closely at those dams, structures that are both a source of pride and a concern for an entire region. The Shaowen Dam, a giant that changes the river. In Yunnan province in southwestern China, the Shaowen Dam stands tall like a giant. It was built from 2002 to 2010, costing $3.9 billion, becoming a marvel that everyone must look up to. With a height of nearly 300 meters, Shaowen ranks among the world's tallest dams. Its reservoir can hold up to 15 trillion liters of water, a number staggering enough to make one dizzy. Thanks to this, Yunnan province always has a stable water supply for irrigation for fields to daily use. Moreover, when combined with other dams on the upper Mekong, this system generates 4,200 megawatts of electricity, producing about 19 billion cubic. To visualize that amount of electricity helps save nearly 7 million tons of coal, producing 13 million tons of CO2. For an agricultural province like Yunnan, with its warm climate year-round, these dams are not only a lifeline but also a driving force for development. But everything has two sides. Shaowen and its siblings not only hold water but also hold the very rhythm of the entire Mekong. When water is blocked, the downstream suffers first. People in Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam watch the river increasingly dry up, their hearts aching. Agriculture declines, fisheries deplete, livelihoods are threatened daily. Scientists say that without a solution, environmental disaster will no longer be a warning but a reality. Shaowen may be the pride of Yunnan, but for other countries, it is a shadow cast over the Mekong River. The question is whether humans can continue to control nature without paying a price? Or one day, will nature itself reclaim what it has lost? Yunnan's agriculture and the role of the dams. People often say Yunnan province in southwestern China is a fertile land where birds settle, thanks to its pleasant year-round weather around 20. That climate is like a gift from heaven for farmers, allowing them to grow everything from tea, coffee, sugarcane, tobacco to rice. In particular, the rice here is so good that it can be harvested up to 3 times a year. And in the northern part of the province, corn is king of the fields, emerging as a staple crop. Overall, the land in Yunnan is fertile, agricultural production is always bustling. For example, in 2020, it dedicated 4 million hectares to growing grains, accounting for nearly 1/5 of the country's total output. Water from the reservoirs of these dams is released steadily, enough to keep nearby fields lush and green. But this stability only exists in areas close to the dams. While people living farther away, downstream, have a completely different, much sadder story. With massive dams like Shaowen or Mujadu, water is retained to serve Yunnan province from irrigation to electricity generation. So much so, people near the dams never worry about water shortages. Every season yields high productivity, but the benefit for one side becomes a disaster for the other. The Mekong River, the mother river of all Southeast Asia, begins to gasp for breath as water is blocked upstream. People say these dams not only hold water but also hold the life of so many lands downstream. Farmers in downstream countries like Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos clearly feel the change. Water no longer flows abundantly, land becomes arid, crops fail. Not to mention, even the weather is affected when the river no longer regulates as before. Thus, from farming matters, China's dams have inadvertently dragged along many unforeseen consequences. Consequences downstream and the endless debate. The issue became clearer starting in 2010, when the Shaowen Dam just began operation. People in the lower Mekong said the river water suddenly decreased significantly. Right at that time, a terrible drought struck 4 countries: Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos. Over 65 million people, who rely on the Mekong River for food and livelihood, have fallen into hardship. By 2016, Cambodia had 18 out of 25 provinces severely lacking water, leaving thousands of rural families stranded. That same year, Thailand recorded 21 deaths due to extreme heat waves, while Vietnam saw up to 2 million people suffering from a lack of clean water to use. In the Mekong Delta, saltwater from the sea intruded deeper due to the weakened river, destroying 10% of the rice crop, leaving farmers to helplessly watch their hard-earned achievements vanish. Faced with this scene, downstream countries turned to blame China, claiming that dams like Shaolin were the main culprits. But China dismissed this, saying the drought was due to nature and harsh weather, not because they were holding back water. After a period of back and forth, the dispute gradually subsided, but suspicions remained. Around 2019 to 2021, thanks to modern technology, more precise measurements revealed that indeed reduced rainfall had caused the drought. However, it cannot be denied that massive dams like Shaolin or Nujadu, with capacities of trillions of liters, have significantly worsened the situation. While downstream areas cried out for help due to water shortages, upstream reservoirs remain full, serving Unites with T blocked the Mekong. The answer remains elusive, but the suffering of downstream communities is all too clear and cannot be erased. Where does the water go when downstream runs dry? Dams held back more than half of the Mekong. It's said that if China had been generous and released water during the rainy season, downstream countries like Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam might have suffered less. But no, it tightly held the water in reservoirs, prioritizing their own needs, ignoring neighboring countries desperate for every drop to survive. This is no secret. In 2019, a research center in Washington called Stimson released a report that shocked everyone. They clearly stated that China's dams were directly linked to the severe drought in 4 Southeast Asian countries. This wasn't guesswork, it was based on satellite images from the company Planet Earth. Technology used to monitor weather and climate change. Those aerial images told the sad story of the Mekong. A 2015 photo showed the downstream river pitifully dry, while upstream in China, water remained abundant, unaffected. By 2017, another image captured monsoon rains lingering only around the Thai-Laos border, unable to move further. Then in 2019, things got even worse. Around the Mekong River, it dried up, with water levels dropping to the lowest in 100 years. It was said the rainy season that year was too weak to save the parched land. But low rainfall was only part of the problem. The main issue was water being held back by dams like Shaolin and Nujadu, not allowed to flow downstream. Thus, while downstream cried out for water, China remained comfortable in its burning reservoirs, serving only themselves. People downstream could only look at their drying fields, filled with helplessness. The consequences were immense, and warnings still hung in the air. The drought brought numerous disasters. Crops withered, harvests were lost, and farmers had nowhere to turn. Moreover, fish in the Mekong River gradually disappeared, a devastating blow to millions of families where fish are a source of livelihood and daily meals. In 2019, when the downstream river fell into a horrific drought, local authorities had to declare a state of emergency. They worry not only for the harvest but also for the future of this other river. Strangely, at the same time, China experienced more rainfall and mountain snowmelt increased. But where did that water go? Not downstream, it all flowed into their reservoirs. Not a single drop was released to save the struggling countries below. Looking back, everyone sees clearly that China's dams not only hold back water but also disrupt the weather and natural flow of the Mekong. Satellite images don't lie. They show the stark contrast between the water-rich upstream and the dry, weak. People wonder, if China were willing to share, could millions of farmers avoid crop failures? Could millions of families escape hunger? But the answer never comes. China still insists the drought is due to nature, not them. Yet the reality is clear. Water held back at Shaolin and Nujadu has made the situation even more dire. Downstream communities can only endure, while the Mekong River grows weaker by the day. People fear that if this continues, not only harvests but the very lives of many river communities will gradually vanish, leaving wounds that may never heal. China holds the water, and downstream pays the price. This is the story. When the Mekong River downstream dries up, farmers lose their crops, fishermen have no fish to catch. People were hoping China would open the gates and release water from those massive dams. But no, they still hold on to trillions of liters of water in reservoirs, while the river downstream weakens. Seeing that, everyone thinks China wants to keep the Mekong River for itself, not sharing much with the suffering neighboring countries. Just one person. The problem lies in China never agreeing to sign international treaties to limit its control over the river. For the past 30 years, they've boldly done as they please, with no intention of sharing any water. So, the downstream countries can only fend for themselves with the difficulties China leaves behind. China knows people are unhappy, so they vigorously deny it. They claim the dams have nothing to do with the Mekong drying up, but everything is due to weather, not their water retention. Their state media, like Global Times, even publishes articles saying China's dams actually help during the rainy season, causing no harm at all. It sounds good, but no one really believes it. As stranger is the Mekong River Commission, which should care for the river. They doubt satellite images from eye on Earth, saying more research is needed before conclusions can be drawn. It's hard to understand, with such clear evidence, why keep beating around the bush? Meanwhile, other countries quietly investigate, and what they find isn't very bright. For example, the University of Colorado in the US studied 30 years of data on 92 large dams in North America, concluding clearly that large dams, everything seems to resonate, making people even more worried about the Mekong. When China releases water, and things no one has fully anticipated, but there are times when China does release water. When hydroelectric plants run at full capacity, the Mekong suddenly surges even during the dry season. Massive reservoirs filled with water accumulated from previous rainy seasons suddenly open, causing water to flow elusively down. It sounds beneficial, but it's not that simple. When water arrives suddenly, downstream people can't react in time. Crops may flood, and fish get swept away. Not to mention, this type of water release is uneven, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, disrupting the river's natural. People say if China cooperated with downstream countries to plan reasonable water releases, things might be less chaotic. But in reality, they still do as they please, not bothering to discuss with anyone. The difficulty lies here. When China holds water, downstream areas dry up, and people suffer. When they release water, it becomes unexpected floods, and no one is happy either. People in Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam are caught in a whirlwind, not knowing which way to turn. Scientists worry even further. They say dams not only change the flow but also affect weather, making rain and wind more erratic. If this continues, not only crops but the entire Mekong ecosystem will gradually be destroyed. Fish decrease, land becomes less fertile, and the lives of riverbank people grow increasingly. People wonder, is there a way for China and other countries to sit down and find a common path? Or will the Mekong River forever endure being controlled, leaving wounds that no one heals? The answer remains up in the air, but the suffering of the people becomes clearer than ever. Water sometimes becomes harmful in the death of the riverbank forests. People often think more water is good, but for the Mekong River, that's not entirely true. A study examining river water data over nearly 100 years shows that in the past 15 years, water levels in the Laos-Cambodia border section sometimes rose by 90 to 150%. What's strange is this happens right in the middle of the dry season. Weather changes certainly can't cause such sudden water increases, but dam releases can. When China runs its hydroelectric plants at full capacity, water from reservoirs rushes down, flooding the lower reach. It sounds beneficial, but the cost is not small. Riverbank plants, used to flooding for a few months then drying out, now can't withstand it. Water stays too high for too long, trees suffocate and die en masse. As dry, it. The suffering doesn't stop at plants. Net flooded forests drag along many fish, birds, and animals losing their habitats and food sources. Riverbank people, who rely on forests and fish to get by, now struggle along with them. China surely knows this, but they still turn a blind eye, only water when they need electricity, releasing it when convenient. As lives are turned upside down, yet no one sees them changing anything. Sadly, it. Laos, a poor country in the region, also rushes to build dams that profit from hydropower. As of 2016, they had over 60 dams on the Mekong's tributaries, not counting those still in the planning stages. The most prominent is the Xayaburi Dam, located right on the main stream, which has sparked intense controversy due to its impact on. People fear that if more dams are built, the Mekong will cease to be itself. Dams keep being added, and the worry seems endless. Hungry water. The water lacks sediment because it's blocked by the dam, losing nutrients to nourish the land and fish. Riverbanks are eroding more severely, and farmland is dry. The Thai company behind this project spent over $600 million to build fish ladders and sediment aids, but experts say it's not enough. Fish populations are still declining, the land is still degrading, and people are still suffering. Since 2010, the lower Mekong region has witnessed a dam building frenzy, largely fueled by investments from. They claim hydropower is clean energy, better than burning coal, with no smoke or dust. It sounds reasonable, but the environmental and social costs are far from greenwashing. The retained water in the US leads to fewer fish, agricultural difficulties, and millions who depend on the river now have nowhere to turn. Faced with this situation, each country, Cambodia has started to reconsider prioritizing the environment by temporarily halting new dam construction. But Laos is the opposite, charging ahead, determined to be. He found a common voice, so the difficulties persist. This issue ISN. In Africa, Ethiopia is also causing tension with Egypt over the Renaissance Dam on the Nile. Egypt fears losing water, while Ethiopia says the dam is necessary for them. Looking around, from the Mekong to the Nile, humans keep chasing short-term gains, forgetting that rivers don't belong to anyone alone. If we don't stop and think, these mother rivers may become exhausted, leaving regret for future generations. The Renaissance Dam and Ethiopia's electricity dream. Ethiopians say the Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile is their great hope. It not only brings electricity to millions living in darkness, but also offers the country a chance to rise up. They plan to sell electricity to neighboring countries like Sudan, South Sudan, Kenya, Djibouti, and Eritrea, both earning money and helping the region. For a poor country like Ethiopia, this dam is like a key unlocking a brighter future. They poured so much effort into it, dreaming of the day every home has lights, machinery runs busily, and life changes. As gain becomes another. Across the river, Egypt looks at that dam with deep unease, seeing no hope in it. As flow decreases by just 2%, they. For a country where the Nile is the source of life, food, clothing, and water for the entire nation, that would be nothing short of a disaster. They say that even a slight reduction in water would cause fields to wither, crops to fail, and millions to go hungry. Egypt doesn't want to gamble with fate like that, so they strongly oppose it. They want Ethiopia to share the river fairly, not hoard the water for themselves. But Ethiopia insists it's their right. The water flows through their land, so they can use it. The two sides argue back and forth, holding countless meetings but finding no way out. Tensions keep escalating, and the people of both countries can only wait anxiously. Looking from the Mekong to the Nile, the story repeats like an endless cycle. On one side is the dream of development, bringing electricity to the people, building a stronger economy. On the other is the fear of losing water, land, and what has sustained them for generations. Ethiopia wants electricity, wants to advance, while Egypt wants to keep the Nile flowing to protect itself. Both have legitimate reasons, but neither is willing to yield. People have tried to sit down, discuss, and find a way for Ethiopia to build a dam without harming Egypt. But everything remains at a standstill. Ethiopia keeps filling the reservoir, while Egypt remains constantly worried, fearing the water will stop flowing to their delta. This issue isn't just between two countries. On the Mekong, China retains water, Laos builds dams, and the lower Mekong suffers from lack of fish and sediment. On the Nile, Ethiopia dreams of electricity, while Egypt fears hunger. No matter the river, the difficulty is the same: how to balance generating electricity with keeping nature and people alive. If a way to share isn't found, the people along the rivers will forever bear the burden. And if you found this information interesting, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for the top secrets. Thank you for watching the entire video, and see you next time.